And we are live. Well,
All
welcome
right.
to the second sort of annual False Neutral reunion live feed. We did this actually in December, like a year and 3 months ago.
So December 23.
Yeah. But it's been almost exactly 2 years since the last episode went live. That was the March 14th of 23. So other than the last we did the last reunion a little bit earlier, but basically we're
Close enough.
we're
Yeah.
close enough to annual. So how are you guys doing?
Not too bad. Haven't really done a whole lot of motorcycle stuff. I've been working a lot on old classic cars and
My first question was going to be what's going on with your old hot rod? Was it 32 Ford?
yeah, so I've been slowly chipping away at things on the 32 Ford. I've got, most of the suspension and everything done, engine done. And so I'm hoping to have it all kind of completed up this summer. But I also got, and I think I probably had it the last time we talked, maybe, but I bought an early Bronco, a 1970
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Bronco. And that doesn't really need much. I mean, well, it needs a lot, but it runs and drives and everything works. And so I've been driving that around. I also inherited for better or worse, a 1980 Corvette,
Oh,
which
wow.
it's actually like a really, really, really clean, nice example. And it was purchased by my wife's grandpa, new, and came out of Texas. And he moved up here, probably in the mid late 80s. And so been driving that around a little bit. It's kind of a blast from the past. It's the first time I've ever driven a Corvette of any kind,
Mm-hmm.
which was this 1980 Corvette. And, like I look at the 1980, they just kind of look big and bulky and they look like they would just drive absolutely horrendously. Shockingly, it actually drives pretty darn good. Like it corners really flat, it's stable. It is a much different driving experience than I would have expected. But it's, the 200 horsepower V8 with automatic transmission. And so there's nothing particularly sporty about it, but it's all black with white leather interior and it's got the T-tops and it's even got a CB radio, because he's a Texan, had to have the CB radio. So it's got like this original 1980 Cobra CB in it. It's kind of a neat car in some ways, kind of embarrassing in others, but it's been pretty fun.
You should put that movies come up your area and they need to rent cars for a certain time era genre. You might be able to make a couple $100 a day on that thing.
Yeah. And everything works in it, and it's got all the options like cruise control and air conditioning, and the headlights pop up the way they're supposed to, and all that. So it's kind of an interesting car, I guess.
Cool, nice.
Yeah.
So you do the pretend it's a Porsche and like backdate it so it's like the 1969 8 looking one, So,
yeah, I kind of thought about that.
There's a whole rabbit hole you could go down that one. So
I had a friend of mine in the Army who lent me her Corvette a couple times. It was I want to say around in 1980. It looked like the pace car, but was like a year later, so it didn't have the pace car graphics on it. The lettering, and it was the first year that the hatch opened on the back. I don't know what year that would be, but I enjoyed that.
Yeah, 81, 82.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed it. And I also had a gentleman here locally that had a 75 convertible.
Yeah.
And he let me drive that. And I really enjoyed it because that had the top down. You didn't feel like you were claustrophobic. It was a whole lot different experience. And I enjoyed that.
Yeah. So, and then still have the Aprilia Tuono, and I've put so few miles on it. I think that I bought it with right around 1,100 miles on it. It's a 2019.
Oh, I thought you bought that new. I didn't realize you bought a used one.
No, I bought it, well, let's see, a year ago? It was December. So I guess
I think you had just bought it when maybe, I don't know if you had it when we did our last one. I think you had just bought it.
Yeah, I think I bought it, and I might not even have taken it home yet because I bought it and paid for it, and then it was, December, and I didn't really want to deal with getting it home straight away. So it stayed at the dealership for a little bit, and then I brought it home. And it now has exactly, and I just checked before this, 1,580 miles on it. So I've put about 400 miles on the thing. And I haven't done a whole lot of motorcycle riding in the past couple of years. And I have a lot of seat time on a Tuono 1100 because of my buddies, and I've, put a lot of miles on it, and, his. And, when I rode the Tuono, and everyone knows the Tuono, it's, just one of the greatest motorcycles. And so, but having not ridden in a couple years, and I have ridden the Tuono around a little bit, it is much more intimidating than I would have ever thought I would feel on a motorcycle. And it's probably just, not having ridden a whole lot in the past couple of years, but it is so anxious and edgy, and it's
that's like 170 horsepower or something like that.
175. And the power delivery, everything is good, but it's just, it's a lot to get right onto, like I had actually contemplated going on a ride this morning, and it's a lot. And I'm almost wondering, like, am I past that point in my life where a Tuono 1100 is just not the right bike for me? And I haven't accepted that yet, but
I think the most horsepower I've ever ridden was like either an FCR 1000 VMAX. Those are what, like 130, 145, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, this is not fun.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine. I mean, I'm sure this is much more better behaved. It's got better engine management. It's got the ride modes. It's got all that stuff to help you.
Yeah.
Traction control, wheelie control. But still, that's
the other part of it too, is, I came up riding without any aids. There was no buttons to push, analog gauges, all of that. And I probably just need to spend more time on it, like going through the adjustments and stuff. But I, like, for the life of me, couldn't figure out really how to, like, make the settings the way that I wanted it. And then, there's only certain modes where you can actually totally turn off, like, the wheelie control and stuff like that. And I didn't know how to get to the setting. And to be fair, I never really, like, spent much time trying to figure it out. But it always felt, like it was sort of limited in a way, and it had the wheelie control on, and it would let the front end come up a little bit. But I guess I didn't know, or I didn't appreciate how much it was limiting the motor. But then the last time I rode it, my friend turned all of the aids off. And, like, they're known to be good at wheeling. I mean, they have a lot of horsepower, but they're not like an FZ09, they're not really designed to wheelie like
right. They're fairly long wheelbase. They're a big bike.
Well, good night. It was like an absolute beast. And after having the wheelie control turned off, and, like, it's like the front end will come up and you let off, and then it comes back down and it compresses the front fork, and then you get on it a little bit more, and then it's just right back up again. And it just felt absolutely out of control. And I think that was the last time I rode it. And I'm like, I'm not sure this is the right bike for me and my the point in my life. So it has just been sitting in my garage, plugged into a battery tender. I start it every once in a while, but this I'm gonna, maybe spend some time on it this spring and summer. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the Tuono 1100 is really the right thing for me.
It's probably one of, like you say, it's probably just one of those things you're out of practice and your mind's not up to speed, and
Yeah.
you go out. I'm not saying it's a one day thing, but let's say you ride it a couple times a week for a month, and then all of a sudden towards the end of that month, you're like, oh yeah, this just feels normal now. So
Yeah. And, I had thought about doing some track days to just have it on a track and, just kind of spend some time on it, seating sitting on it, riding it, exploring it, because it's definitely not something that I've learned you want to get on after a year of not having ridden or anything. It's just like I don't feel unsafe on it. I just don't feel like I'm really enjoying it because you get anxious. It's really edgy. Everything is just, a little bit more. So yeah, so I haven't put it nearly as many miles on it as it deserves. I had a pretty fun experience in December, not really motorcycle related, but doing some off-road racing.
Oh,
My friend is the NASCAR driver, Greg Biffle, who's actually been
holy,
doing a lot of YouTube stuff lately.
there's a casual name drop.
yeah, really.
So it's one of these random things where he grew up, he's from my hometown, and my dad used to do a lot of engine work for him when he was just a local racer, and my dad and him just became friends over time. And we've always done, different off-road racing stuff before. And there was it's drag racing. They build these UTVs, like Polaris RZRs, but they're really just kind of based off of a Polaris RZR. They're all at huge turbos. I mean, massive, massive turbos, methanol injected. There's 750 horsepower, and they have them all built into chassis, and they're all lightweight. So they're, about 1,600 pounds with 750 horsepower. And there's this racing series, and Greg is like a part owner of the series. And so they had a race in Glamis, and he asked me and a few other people to come down and kind of help set up the track and help run the race. And I ended up racing one of his cars in it's called the Sand Outlaw series. And he has this really cool property in Glamis, and Glamis, everything around it is all like BLM land owned.
Right.
So there's very little of it that's private, but there's also just really significant restrictions on what you can build. And so in the whole area of Glamis, there's exactly one building, and it's his, and it's this huge building. I mean, it's probably 300 by 500 feet. And inside it, there's like a full commercial kitchen and a full bar and this incredible machine shop. I mean, it looks like a NASCAR facility. I mean, it's really, really cool. So we spent about a week down there racing these off-road cars and, doing some different off-road riding out in the sand dunes and stuff like that. It was such an incredible trip.
That was very cool.
Yeah. And, just in those cars, they have two-step launch control. So you stage the car and you just get it on the two-step and then you unleash it. And it's just, 750 horsepower in a 1,600-pound car. It is wild.
Instant wheelie.
Yeah. Well, these cars, they're built so they don't wheelie. The way that the chassis are built and the suspension design and everything, they just hook and book and they go. Yeah. Cool. So that was pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
So,
yeah.
That family's fine. Everything's going well.
Yeah, it was just me and actually my buddy that rides the other Aprilia Tuono. He and I went together. We've done these types of off-road racing trips with Greg bunches of times in the past. And so, usually when I go, he goes too, because, Greg, he knows him. my buddy Joe is always a hard worker. He, gets things done. He knows how to fix these things. He's worked around these for a long time. And so we got to go together, and it was a good time. So hopefully I'll get to do another one of those trips. He's been doing a lot of work with Garrett Mitchell, Cletus McFarland. And I'm like, I really want to meet Cletus and like just show up on one of his YouTube videos. And so actually when we were there, Cletus has a sand car, and it was stored at Greg's shop down there in Glamis. And I think like the next weekend or the week after, Cletus and crew were down there at the Glamis shop. And one of these times I'm going to get to go there, and Cletus is going to be there, and hopefully I can be on a YouTube show.
Cool.
Yeah.
Eric, what have you been up to? I've seen a bunch of curling photos on your Facebook feed.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is curling season 2, and it's a very busy part of curling season right now. Just let's see, last weekend I was at the regional 5 and under championship. Didn't go quite like how I wanted, but we won a lower thing. We didn't win the main one. We won the C bracket or whatever, because came up to the so the other team that was probably my team was runner up last year, and then there's another team that I thought was as good or maybe could be a little better than us. And it started out we're in the opposite bracket, so we would have met in the finals theoretically. Well, things got moved around. We met in the second round, and I blew it because it came down to the last shot, and I missed the last shot, which if I would have hit it, we would have won, but we didn't. So anyways, so
I have to say my wife, all the leaders of business she's in, all as a kind of a team building thing, went to the local curling rink, and they kind of had like kind of like the introduction for people who don't know the sport.
Learn to curl. Yep.
She was fascinated by it. She thought it was so cool. She's like, there's so much going on there.
Yep.
So
and then let's see, this weekend I've got a curling thing in Canada, but that's sort of a us, and then there's a club in Canada. We've been doing an exchange. This will be the 109th year of it.
Oh, wow.
So that's a thing. It's more of a fun thing than it is anything, although there is competition involved for a cup that it's been going on forever. And then the weekend after that I go to Denver. We're trying to qualify for the National 5 and Under Championship, which I don't think we'll do this year, but next year. We're doing this more building up so that we can make a really strong run at it next year. So that's the curling stuff. And I've been playing on a bum knee for a year and a half or 2 years now. So I'm finally, I've got a video visit with the PA in 2 weeks so that we can finally schedule orthoscopic surgery so I can get my knee fixed, which will make all the difference in the world. Anyways, that's that. See what else. No motorcycles. Mine is still in the same position it is. Although I did at least somewhat organize it at one point, so it's in boxes. So one day there might be a crate show up at Garrett's and just say like, just when you're done, send me the bill. I'm trying to think. I bought and sold a Porsche Boxster in the last year or so. It was great. Not saying it was completely worth what it cost me to do it, because it got off a truck and I drove it, and then a week later the couple fingers on the clutch plate broke. So I had no clutch. Not only the iron disc on the outside of the pressure plate. Sorry, it was a pressure plate, not the clutch. The pressure plate cracked, and then the fingers on it bent. So yeah, let's just say putting a clutch in a Porsche, not the cheapest thing, and then a bunch of while you're in theirs. So yeah, that got expensive in a hurry. And
is a Boxster mid-engine or rear engine?
Mid-engine.
It is.
Yeah. That said, phenomenal car. God, I love that car. It was so great to drive.
Are you
And it had an
familiar with-
aftermarket exhaust, and there's a section on the street that I live just off of, which is the main roads, and then it goes under. It goes down, but it goes under like highway and surface street. It's like 3 levels above you, and yeah, when you're changing gears in like second gear at about 7,000 RPM, the sound going underneath there is just absolutely glorious. So, anyways, but took it on some road trips and it was great. Had a lot of fun with it. Unfortunately, other things needed to be taken care of, so it got moved down the road and ended up selling for way less than I wanted on Cars and Bids. So, yeah. Hey, now we can see you, Garrett.
There we go. So on Cars and Bids, is there no reserve that you set? It's just
there was a reserve, but we were going back and forth on what they wanted as a reserve and what I wanted reserve. We sort of split the difference. If it would have gone for about $3,000 more, it ended up selling for just under 15 grand. And I bought it for like 21 and had to drop about 6 in repairs on it. So
yeah,
maybe a little more by the time I was all done, because there are a couple other little things that had to get fixed. But it was great. Loved it. I will absolutely buy another one again at some point, but it's not a motorcycle. That is the one thing. Is like, you go on the road, you put the top down, you get on the roads you want to drive on, and it's in the ballpark. Like you walk into a ballpark, like, but it's not like being on a bike. It's just not. So, definitely need something 2-wheeled in my future at some point, but the Element is still running and is up to like 237,000 miles.
Oh, wow.
And turned this is, well, model year wise, it's 20 years old now, so still going. It's okay, but it really needs to get replaced at some point. So there's a few other things in the way before something 2-wheeled shows up in my life. Other than that, not a ton. Just working a bunch. Unfortunately, not doing as much announcing last year. That's one of the reasons why the car had to go, is because had like 3 things going on for announcing, and I'm like, I just used that money to pay for it, and then most of that dried up, and so car had to go. Just a couple things going on announcing this year, but nothing really noteworthy, unfortunately. So, but still trying to figure some of that out. Put together a good demo reel, put together a website, get some pictures taken, and periodically I reach out to try and do some stuff, but not getting anything on that, unfortunately. So work is work. And I forget the last time we did this, did I talk about, because I think this was a year and a half ago now, when I got to go on the demo ride of the Monster?
No, I haven't heard about it.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So this would have been, wasn't last summer, it was the summer before, I think, but anyways, or fall, something like that. Anyways, doesn't matter. Local Ducati store and the BMW store did something together, and they had demo days or whatever. They took you out on a ride. And so when Garrett was talking about riding the Tuono, it was like kind of like riding the Monster, because it's like a 410-pound bike full of fluids and 105 or 110 horsepower. And it had an Acro exhaust on it, so it sounded absolutely erotic. And I don't use that word lightly. It just was. And same thing, like you come around a corner, you open up the throttle, and all of a sudden you're up at about 45 degrees, and you're just like, and then okay, gently roll off, and then it was, and just rolling on the throttle, getting on the highway, and you look down, and all of a sudden there's 3 digits showing. You're like, ooh, that was fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, like the first 20 minutes of that ride my mind was not up to speed with the bike, but they actually took us like on an hour ride, and by the end it was like, okay, this is like the perfect combination. 400 pounds and about 100 horsepower is sort of like the perfect combination, or at least at that point it seemed to me to be. So if I get a bike, that's probably in the ballpark what I'm looking at. Super comfortable, and that was the thing, even at a highway speed on a naked bike at near triple digit speeds, it was it was fine. It didn't feel like you were being buffeted to death or anything like that. So,
I've never found a windshield that I like being behind as much as a naked.
Yeah.
It's just give me the wind straight on rather than that, buffeting that you get off a windscreen.
Yep.
The Spider has one that's like down, mid chest level and really doesn't affect your helmet area at all. It takes a little bit of pressure off of your chest, but you don't notice it around your head. And I'm fine with that.
After I was done, I got in my car and I basically just like dictated something into my phone, and I ended up cleaning it up later and posting it on LinkedIn. I said something like, God, yeah, it was because it was a demo model. Like, I wonder if and the Ducati store is literally 3/4 of a mile up the street from me. I mean, I can walk there in about 15 minutes. So I jokingly,
this one that just is under new management because the old one was so corrupt they took the dealership
license away. Yep. That's the one. But I jokingly said something when I linked to it off like my Facebook account or something. I'm like, maybe if wonder if they could make me a super special deal on this thing or whatever. And they actually reached out and said, well, we can, but the numbers didn't work. But which is fine. One of those things you don't really need. But I would say the new Monster was it was damn near perfect for me, especially with that exhaust. That's sort of like it would have to have that for me, just because the auditorial things it did was just, it really sealed the deal on the bike. So, but yeah, that's really my only experience being on a bike in the last 18 months or so. So, yes, I miss it. Yes, I sort of need it in my life for various reasons. But still going to be, unless something drastically changes, going to be a while off, but, going to be some time off, unfortunately. So, but other than that, things are generally good in Detroit. Kind of same, gigs. Okay. All good.
Excellent.
I'll probably be getting the yellow Kenny Roberts RZ 350 for sale here pretty soon. That's one where the values of those have just gone to a place where I didn't really think they would get.
Yep.
Right.
And I have, right now at the moment, I have two RZ 350s and an RD 350, and the Kenny Roberts, it's just one that probably needs to go to a new home.
Last time we talked, you were messing with the fuel tank. Was the last thing you needed.
Yeah. So the fuel tank I fixed. It had a little bit of a rust hole in it, just right where the petcock would be.
Right. And you were debating whether to paint it or try to fix it without painting it.
Yeah. So I ended up stripping it. I sent the whole fuel tank to a chemical stripper. It strips everything out so you can see exactly where the rust is. It takes or the holes, and it takes all the rust. It's just perfectly clean metal. And actually the whole tank was in really good shape. It's just right where a little bit of, it ends up being water sits in the bottom of the fuel tank, just caused a small spot of a rust hole. And so I repaired that. It's painted. And so the motorcycle is complete, and it just needs to go down the road. I've got so many motorcycles just
have you ridden it at all since you got it up and running?
No, I've never ridden it. I've only started it and run it, but have actually technically never ridden it. But over the last couple of years, these RZ 350 values have just gone absolutely bananas.
Yeah.
I mean, when I first got that, it was probably a $4,000 to $5,000 motorcycle. And I think maybe the values have tapered a little bit, but they're still so much higher than they were when I first got that.
Yeah.
Where are they now? Like double, like 10?
More than that.
Oh yeah.
Wow. Actually, there's been some selling for upper teens.
I just saw, I think it was Iconic Motorbikes just had one for sale that I think went for 15 and change.
Wow.
Yeah. And I suspect mine's one of the nicer I mean, every single part on it has been gone through and refinished, mine is a very, very, very nice example. Um, and so, yeah, I'd expect to get more than 15 for it at this
Hmm.
point.
Yeah, call Hobby. Talk to him.
Yeah.
He'd probably help you out on that.
Yeah.
I was surprised. There was a dealership down in Florida that just blew out a bunch of really unusual bikes, and the prices they got for them on Iconic were all over the place. I mean,
Yeah.
some of them went for a whole lot of money, and there was like Bultaco Metrala GTS went for, I think, $2,800 or something like that, and I was like, wow. And some of them were I thought some people got some steals, and there's been a couple of them on Bring a Trailer. So there was a oh no, it was the Mecum auction in Vegas that, like, the NS 250 or NSR 250, the
Honda.
JDM
Yeah.
race replica 250 Honda
Yep.
went for like $2,000.
Oh, really?
And I was like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me!"
How is that possible?
Yeah.
I'll have to let me take a minute and just go out and look at it, and maybe I'm misquoting it. I might be misremembering.
I mean, depending on what model, if it's a mid 80s, I can see that, I guess, because that was sort of like the first street bike version of it. But when you get to the early to mid 90s, in the last few years, those things got get really expensive really fast. I knew someone who had one, the credit card one, and even then, those were super special bikes and not the cheapest things. And that was in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And she had one. So someone I used to know in LA. She raced a little bit. So
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah. So no, I forgot what came up recently, but made me think of my RZ 500, and it's just like, God, I'd like to have one of that again. Just just to have it for a year or two to remember it, even though I sort of do, but just solidify that. But man, you can't touch a decent one of those for almost under 20 anymore.
Yeah.
So well, I mean, granted, a long time ago, but I bought mine in 97. I want to say I bought it for $3,000.
Wow.
Out of Canada. So
yeah, I think the scarcity and the values on
Yeah.
those have really helped the RZ 350.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Because the 500s are really unobtainable now at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to have invested in Nvidia before COVID, so I could afford one of those. So
Yeah.
but
I'm curious to hear about Voltakenstein.
It's right there. Pretty much looks exactly the same way it looked last time I talked to you guys about it. Doing some little things. The rear brake rod was really janky, and I got to the point where I'm like, it just needs to be right. So I'm on my third different brake cable, trying to hook up a cable operated rear brake rather than the rod. And I think I've got it worked out. It does have an exhaust on it now. I bought a aftermarket Astro 360 exhaust for it, and it didn't fit the frame. And I also wanted to lengthen the head pipe a little bit and bring down the peak RPM just a little bit. So it got cut apart, and it's back from the welder, and it's not perfect. Got a couple little dings in it, and it needs to be stripped and painted. But I welded up a nice little rubber isolation bushing for the back of it, so that where it mounts, where the swing arm is, that mount is rubber mounted. And I made the little, it's like a little sleeve with two plates, and I had the plates made from Send Cut Send.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy, are they handy. You just make up anything you want in CAD. I just didn't even use CAD program. I used Illustrator and sent them an EPS file and told them what to make it out of. And a week later, you get it back. And
I've heard a lot of good things about that.
this was so small that they were like, I could basically, for what their fees were, I could get one or I could get a dozen for the same price, but it was still only like $40 for a dozen. So I now
Wow.
have all these extras that I can figure out other things to do with.
Yeah.
But that's done. I didn't do anything for like 8 months because we had foundation work done last spring. I think I had scheduled it when we had our last
Mhm.
one,
I remember something about that.
and I had to completely remove our deck. So I disassembled the entire deck, a screw at a time, stacked them all on our utility trailer in the driveway, and had them come in, and they completely excavated around our whole. We have an add-on bedroom on the back that they had to pier. So they did all that, and then I had to put the deck back on, and a couple of the boards were bad, but most of them I could reuse. But I had to literally go out and buy pounds and pounds and pounds of deck screws and put them all back in, and I had numbered them all so I knew where everything went. But that was months of free time to do that because I was doing it, after work and stuff like that. And in the process, I've had arthritis in my wrist for 30 years. I've got some genetic predisposition for it. And between handguns, motorcycles, power tools, mice, working on a computer all day, it's pretty much used up. And that whole process of taking off and putting them back on, I jacked it up for good. So I can't do. I pretty much have to wear the brace 24/7. I got a nice little cushy one I sleep in, and went to see an orthopedic doctor and a physical therapist. And they both kind of said, "You've got so many motions of that wrist left. How quickly do you want to use them up? Because after that, it's just going to hurt all the time." I'm like, okay, that's a really good prognosis. So I've been slowing down, but in the process, I've got a retirement date firmed up in the future.
Huh?
So I'm looking at trying to get all of my project bikes done by the time I retire, and in the process, not start anything new. But I had so many tons of spare parts that I bought over the years that I actually have 3 separate rolling chassis. The one that's the old KTM that kind of looks like a cruiser. Well, here I'll pull up some pictures, and I don't know if can I add pictures to the. Yeah, there we go. That's the Retro Blaster. And this picture doesn't have. I bought a really cheesy Chinese fake alligator skin, like spring pan seat for it, and it looks really cheesy. But this is just literally, you can tell there's not even a rear axle. It's just a metal rod through there. But this is enough that you can kind of get the idea what I'm going for that one.
You need to send this over to the 44 Teeth Boys for Get Your Rat Out.
Yeah.
So anyways, there's that, and I've got I don't know if I can get to these quickly. Oh yeah, right here. Okay. Let me add oops. Oh, here we go. This is the all the parts from the Aramaki chassis that I gave up on. I was like, still had all the pile of parts. So I was like, well, gee, it's a shame. They're all put together. I got, everything arranged. What can I, so for $300, I bought that is a Montesa King Scorpion. Same thing as the Rapida that I posted a whole article about, or a little blurb about, on the the False Neutral Facebook page. I really liked that bike. So I went ahead and bought that, and the swing arm, the shocks, everything I already had. So that's kind of like the phoenix that's rising from the ashes of the one I gave up on. And I called a scrap guy, and I had him just take all the Ducati stuff for scrap. It was like, you know what? I'm not a Ducati guy. I am sick of how, because that 620 motor is almost the same weight as like the 1100 motor, because all they did was sleeve it down. The cases are the same size. The clutch is the same. I mean, it is a giant motor. And when you take one of the cylinders off, you have the most lard butt 310 cc motor. And I was like, this just doesn't make any sense. So I got rid of it. And the frame on that Aramaki is designed for a horizontal single. It's not good for really anything. So it's sitting in a storage unit across town. And the last one I'm building strictly as it's not going to be a running motorcycle. It's just going to be a static display, but I'm building something that's going to kind of look like a mid 60s British lightweight. The front wheels from a Bridgestone 175, rear wheels from a Yamaha Big Bear Scrambler 305, mid 60s brakes on it. And so that's strictly, I'm never going to buy all the internals for the ATC motor. It's just, I don't need another 2-stroke single street bike. But I think it's cool enough looking that I'm going to try and put number plates on it and no lights and make it look like a club racer from the mid 60s, oval number plates on it and stuff like that. And so that's just something fun that's going to end up being a man cave decoration when I'm done. So
yeah.
What was the bike in our chat that you were talking about sending up to Garrett for a show?
The Bride of Frankenstein, which I think I had just gotten running when we had our last live feed.
Yeah.
And I rode it around some, and it's actually a lot of fun. The foot pegs vibrate too much. It's got ATC 90 foot pegs, so they're mounted in here, and they're really wide. So at the end, it's just this lever that just, the vibrations are really bad through the foot peg. Other than that, it is surprisingly fun to ride. It's, as far as weight, length, power, speed, it's pretty much the same as a Honda Navi. So it's nothing. I'm not worried about wheelies on this one.
Don't have to turn the wheelie control off on it.
No, I don't. But it's just handbrakes like a scooter, no foot controls, and the CVT, and it gets around really fun. It handles well. I did take it to a show. It was actually Bill Wilson's 2-stroke show that they have here locally, and they have it at a 50s style diner, and they have a big sign out front that says 2 strokes with an arrow pointing in, and then there's a shopping center next door, and it says 4 strokes over this way. So I couldn't park it there. I had to park it on the other side of the median. But about an hour after I was there, somebody went over to look at it, and they came back and he said, "Is that yours?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "That's got a whole lot of stuff going on." I'm like, "Yeah, you're right."
Yeah.
So after that, he started telling everybody to go over and look at it. There were like 2 or 3 guys clustered around it for the rest of the show, and a lot of positive comments. One guy wanted to take it for a ride. I'm like, "Sure, it's a pile of garbage. Go ahead. I'm not worried about it." So he took it out and rode it for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. He came back and he said, "That's really impressive." So,
just looking at it as like a casual glance, it almost looks like it was built from the factory. Like
it's unlike, I would have never built that. Let me there's pictures of it out on Facebook. If somebody's watching, they can go scroll down and look at it. But there's a video on my YouTube of me just a POV. I wore a chest GoPro and took it out, and it's like 5 or 10 minutes of me just tooling around town on it. And it really is so much better than it could have been. And quite honestly, I would have never built that if I didn't have those parts. It kind of reminds me of the scene in Apollo 13 where they dump all the stuff out and they go, okay, you need to make this fit this. We're using nothing but this, because that's all they had in the spacecraft.
Yeah.
And I kind of was like, okay, this is what I've got to work with. These are my crappiest parts. Can I build something? And it's kind of it's got kind of a scrambler vibe to it. And it's actually, for getting around town, it's pretty cool. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. I mean, I rode it some. Right now it's across town in the storage unit, mainly for the winter, but I don't know what I'm going to do. And by the way, I never heard back from the one moto show. They didn't respond. I didn't expect that they would. And they had evidently the first week in March was when they were going to let everybody know if they were interested. So
yeah,
I'm not terribly shocked that I didn't hear from them. But in fact, I sent pictures of it to like a lot of the like bike blogs, like Bike Brewers. There's a Bike Bound and one of the other ones. I didn't send it to Bike EXIF because they basically say, unless you've got professional quality photos, we're not going to be interested anyway. So I was like, yeah, okay, you're not. But none of them were interested in it. I was like, okay. So, but yeah.
Did you get it registered?
Oh yeah. I actually had to. Missouri has no bonded title or anything like that. In order to get a title for a bike that you don't have, you have to take the Department of Revenue to court. So I literally had to, I represented myself and actually won, but I had to, there's enough online evidence. They tell you kind of, plenty of people have done it, and they say, this is what your petition has to say, and this is how you do it. So it took me like 3 trips downtown before I got all the paperwork correct, and they gave me a court date. But I went, and sure enough, there was an attorney for the Department of Revenue that was there, and he was like, it's not in the federal crime database, it's not in the insurance theft database, it's not anything that the department has any record of, it's not from the state, so we don't object. And in fact, here's a summary judgment that we suggest that judges use. And I walked out with this summary judgment statement that day and could go down and register it. So yeah, cool. I have a title, street title in my name. I've got a fully legal Missouri plate on the back, and I've got agreed value insurance through Hagerty. So it cost me like, I think $92 a year to insure it. So, yeah. But now that I've got it all set up, I'm like, I don't know how much I'm going to ride it, but, and the thing is, I didn't deliberately do anything janky, but this is literally, why am I using those shocks? Because I had them. Why am I using those forks? Because I had them. It's like, there was no level of engineering behind the configuration. Now, I did look at things like, the rake and trail and make sure it had a safe amount of trail. In fact, it's got a lot of trail. It's very stable. But even with all that, there's no way I would put this on Facebook or, Craigslist and let some, 16-year-old kid buy it. I'm like, you're going to get a mile down the road and the wheel's going to fall off or something because I did something stupid. And even if I have you sign something that says, I know that this was built by a total moron out of complete garbage, I still would feel bad. Even if I wasn't liable, I wouldn't want to do that to somebody. And it's not like you can buy a repair manual for it. I mean, right. I just made all the stuff up. It's like, there's no torque settings. There's no factory tools for it. It's just what I had around here. So it's like, well, I can't really sell it. Now I got to find a place to put it and keep it. And I don't want it to go bad, so I'm keeping the battery charged and changing the oil in it and making sure it doesn't get corroded. But for how long?
One of those things on a Saturday or Sunday, you just roll it out and run it down the corner for some coffee or something. And,
most of my trips have been down to a little coffee shop in town. So I cruise a couple miles I live in a suburb that used to be a little railroad town before the city grew out to it. So we've got a nice little railway the railway depot still there, and it's got a little whistle stop coffee shop next to it that I go down and sit on the bench, watch people go by on the street, and then come home. So that's kind of what it's for.
Mm-hmm.
But
did you ever contemplate putting a horizontal motor, like a Honda Clone motor, in it rather than the 212cc?
There wouldn't have been any room for that.
Yeah.
I might have been able to, but not really. I did think about putting a like a 140 or 190cc engine in the Aramaki frame, but it would have been dwarfed. It would have, there's so much room in there, and this would have been like this, and there would have been this huge gap around it. And that is the heaviest. It's got cast iron parts to that, not cast iron, but like cast steel arms. It's not all tubular. It's incredibly heavy. There's a reason why Harley stopped making those, because they were just very fat and heavy. So I'm like, man. But right now you can get like the Lifan like 250cc air-cooled singles for like $300. Like, well, that could fit into one of these frames. But I really would still like to do I think the red frame, the cruiser frame, I would really like to put a blaster motor in that. I still would like to do that. And I was looking at the Montesa frame, and unfortunately I can't put a Montesa motor in it because Montesas have the chain on the right, and the Suzuki wheel I have has the brake on the right and the chain on the left. So I'm like, okay, I can't do that. But a KDX 200 motor would fit in there really nicely.
Yeah.
So, because I've actually seen them mount those in Montesa and Bultaco frames, and I do have a spare 200cc Bultaco engine right up there that I could rebuild and put in if I wanted to do engine work. Because it would literally bend the mounts around a little bit, because it's interesting. The Montesas are offset a little bit this way because they run the chain over here, and the Bultacos are offset a little bit this way because they run the chain over there. So it's like they build the engine and they go, oh, we need a rear tire. Oops. And so I'd have to mess with it a little bit, but I could put that in there. So, but I don't know if I'll ever get around to that. Right now, I'm just trying to get to the point where I've got 3 rolling chassis where everything, the fuel tank, the wheels, the suspension, everything are all bolted solidly together, and there's nothing janky. They're really put together the right way. And then I don't know, maybe I'll try and sell them at a swap meet or something, and just as a, hey, put an engine in it, have fun.
Yeah.
So, or I'll send them to my friend Garrett and see what he can do with them. I was truly thinking, okay, if this gets accepted into the One Moto show, and I spent a couple $100 to ship that out to the West Coast, am I really going to want it back? Am I going to pay to have this shipped back? I'm going to be like, Garrett, I'll send you a title. You just won a new motorcycle. So,
yeah.
If there's one person in the world who wouldn't be intimidated by how weird it is, it would be you. So I was like,
that's probably true.
You can let your wife or your kids ride it or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Although it'd probably be a little underwhelming after, getting off the Tuono and getting on that whole.
I don't know. That might be more my speed these days.
I haven't gotten it to 45 miles an hour on straight and level ground.
Yeah.
45, you got to be going down an on-ramp or something like that. You need a little bit of either a tailwind or a slight downward incline to get to 45. It's about 42, 44, and it just hangs there. So
Yeah. There's only one motorcycle that I actually regularly and routinely ride almost every day where it's not raining, and that's my little Trail 70. It stays parked in my garage, my little sapphire blue Trail 70. It always starts on the very first kick. It rides like a brand new motorcycle, and I just tootle it around the neighborhood. Yeah.
Well, I'm coming up to 10 years driving the Kazashi in, I think it was like first week in June. I bought it 10 years ago. So it's not as old as the Element, but it's actually 14 years old now, but it was like 4 years and a couple months when I bought it. So
the advantage the Element has is it was based off a CRV, so I'm always going to be able to find parts for it. So
yeah, I've worried about parts a couple times.
Another year.
It's been fairly reliable. I was seriously considering buying something new, and when I ran the numbers, I was like, the Blue Book on my car is like $5,000. It runs perfect. It's only got less than 90,000 miles on it because I've got my wife and I, if we do anything, we do it in her minivan or we take our truck. We've got a F-150 Super Crew that we use to haul our RV and, do anything on the weekends if we go out to the farm or whatever. So my car just gets me back and forth to work. And if I'm going to retire, we don't need to have a third vehicle, and it runs perfectly. And quite honestly, after 10 years of driving, I still love it. It is still solid.
That's the important thing.
It's got, I replaced the shocks on it. It's got new tires on it. Anything that I've had any issues with, I've went ahead and corrected. It's got a little tiny rust spot by one of the wheels where it's just there's two pieces of sheet metal sandwiched and it's just bubbled up in between them. Nothing structural. And it's not even through the paint. You can just tell the paint's starting to bubble up.
A little corrosion on it. Yeah.
Other than that, and it's still fun to ride. Now, I will say with my wrist, having a manual gets a little old on the highway, constantly having to do that. I'm like, okay, I could go with an automatic, but I will say it is one of the nicest handling front wheel drive cars I have ever had or driven from anybody. And it's still just fun to drive and throw around, and it's slow car fast. It's 185 horsepower, so it's not fast, but it's fun.
I'll be ageist here and say, well, you'll never have to worry about being stolen, being a manual.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like a Suzuki Kazashi. Oh, what?
We'll see in about another 2 or 3 years, it'll be old enough that someone, whatever the current version of whatever a hipster will be at that point, it'll be so ironically uncool.
It'll be cool.
It'll be cool. Exactly. So they'll.
Well, we're almost at an hour. Anything else we should cover before? I'll continue to post stuff on the Facebook.
Still plans for the drawing a blank on it. The longest day of the year ride.
Oh, the Smack Dab ride. Yeah.
Smack Dab,
yeah. Registration's open. We had our 10th year last year. It's going to be number 11 this time. We get about 100 people a year doing it, and really lodging and the remote location, it's not going to get any bigger. That's about what we can expect. I don't expect it'll ever get any bigger than that, but yeah, we're going to keep doing it. And I don't ride it every year, but I'm not going to ride it this year. Didn't ride it last year, but maybe next year. I think I'll be retired, so my wife and I will have free time. And
do you think you'll have free time?
Well, we will have more flexibility in managing our time. So, okay, well, that's 59 minutes and 46 seconds. So thanks for doing this, guys. Thanks for everybody who was interested enough to tune in or watches this on the recording.
Yeah, so it was fun to catch up. It's good to see you guys.
Good to see you. So long.
All right, so long, guys.